Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright. It might have taken us a week, but we made it to Friday. One step closer to some great matchups this weekend in the NFL. What's up, C? You look like you want to say something.
You got another new, is that another new dress?
And Jenna went on a shopping spree, man. For
That's
real.
another new dress?
It is another new dress.
Man, they done
another new dress.
The budget, they done blew out the budget.
Should I be noticing that these blazers are, I feel terrible.
No,
it's not my
Jenna,
strong suit, but.
No, you,
Okay.
don't worry. Don't get all, we're just giving
Fresh
you compliments.
All right, I'll take
Jenna
it.
got new gear on.
Man, if you think about Cris Carter, how many new dresses we've seen, think about how many new dresses she made Christine. No, I can't do that one, can't do that one. She must have bought 50
That is on the
new ones.
board. That is on the board.
Christine's doing
I am
a great
picky.
job.
Anyway, big show for you today. We start with the undefeated Ravens visiting the undefeated Chiefs. Last season, the two faced off. It took overtime for Kansas City to get the win. This season, a different Ravens team led by a more mature, more versatile, more dynamic Lamar Jackson. On the other side, an even more mature, even more versatile, and even more dynamic quarterback in Patty Mahomes. Both QBs were singing each other's praises this week.
Lamar, if Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are the GOATs, in your words, then what is Patrick Mahomes?
So he on his way. Those guys have Super Bowls. He's a dynamic quarterback. His third year. He's been doing a tremendous job. Former MVP. Just can't wait to compete against him again.
Going from year one to year two, there's a huge switch that you kind of start understanding the offense at a different level, and it's able to let him have success more as a passer, which, I mean, he's always had the talent, but it's about learning the offense, and he's done that now. And then obviously with his running ability, he can still do that. So it's going to be a great challenge.
So both quarterbacks singing each other's praises. That's going to be the focal point this week when you look at this game to see how both come out and compete. See, let's start with the overall matchup here. How do the Ravens upset the Chiefs?
Well, for one, their defense, the Ravens, Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator, they play a 34 front. Can that give Patty Mahomes an offensive line? We've talked about yesterday Eric Fisher, the left tackle for the Kansas City. He's not going to be playing in this game. And if you talk about Baltimore and covering Baltimore, they've been playing football back in Baltimore since the Ravens 21 years. 18 of those years, they've been either in top 10 and either in scoring or in yardage. In yardage. And that's just an incredible stat. 18 out of 21. They have another defense that they've added, the free safety. Earl Thomas. Earl is playing well in this system. He's been rejuvenated after struggling the last couple years there in Pete Carroll's system. But this should be an exciting game. How do they win? Baltimore's defense got to play outstanding. What is outstanding? If you can hold Kansas City in the 20s, 27 points, keep them under that 30, that's the way to victory. And we know time of possession. Which team in the National Football League leads time of possession? That's Baltimore. That has a lot to do with Lamar. I believe that Lamar, he's playing some of the best football of any dual threat quarterback that I've ever seen play the position. I came into the league with Randall Cunningham. I saw Michael Vick emerge. Neither one of them were able to play at the level as far as when they had their youth, been able to run and understanding concepts and throwing the ball effectively down the field. People don't realize Baltimore Ravens second in the NFL with the Chargers in 14 plays of over 20 yards. So we know the defense has to play outstanding, contain them, keep them under 30 points. Lamar's got to be the dual threat, continuing to grow in that offense. And I believe this is going to be one of the most exciting games that we've seen and potentially a preview of something to happen in the AFC playoffs. John.
And a game that I believe, will be discussing, no matter who wins it, in December when we are looking at, okay, so who's a team right now that can get a bye? Who's a team right now that is positioned well for the playoffs? Because in the AFC at the moment, there are three teams that have separated themselves, even through just two weeks of the season. The Patriots, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. They are the preeminent favorites in their respective divisions, and those three teams right now are the teams who are most confident. In fact, they might be the only three teams in the conference right now that you can say with a level of confidence are going to be in the playoffs.
Right, especially with the Ravens. Who's chasing them? That being Pittsburgh, quarterback out.
Exactly.
We got
Cleveland doesn't look
We got
good.
Darnold with mono. Cleveland, man, they got a tough stretch of 5 weeks.
Yeah.
They might be out of this after 7 weeks.
And the Chargers gave a game away this weekend as far as a team that competed with Kansas City. The reason I bring up those three teams is the difference between first and second in the playoff picture is big but not enormous. The difference between second and third is absolutely critical because you get a bye. So this game will have reverberations for, I think, months going forward. Now, how do the Ravens win? They have to get out to a fast start. Kansas City against Jacksonville. A Jacksonville defense that, by the way, since playing Kansas City, has allowed a total of 20 points. A Jacksonville defense that looks pretty damn good when they're not playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs scored on 8 consecutive possessions against Jacksonville. The Raiders the following week. Look, they got off to a good start, 10-0 in the first quarter. And then the Chiefs ended the game by halftime with 4 straight touchdowns. The Ravens need this to be, need the Chiefs to be in a position they haven't been yet this year. 1-score game at halftime. Close going into the second half where the Chiefs have to play a full 60 minutes. Where the Ravens can maybe take advantage of the weather. It's supposed to be windy and rainy in Kansas City. Grind on Kansas City with a power running attack. Let Lamar, especially if it's a sloppy field, on a potential pass play, break off and run himself and see if the defenders can get with him. Mark Andrews is a key player in this game. Everyone's talking about Hollywood Brown. The Chiefs will prepare for Hollywood Brown as much as you can prepare for one of the fastest people in the league. But Mark Andrews, the tight end, the Chiefs had trouble covering tight ends last year. I would imagine he could be an enormous weapon for the Baltimore Ravens. But what, to me, this game is going to come down to is, can the Ravens score 30 points? Because I agree with Cris. I don't think you're going to be able to hold Kansas City to 17. Kansas City, at a minimum, is going to get 27, 28 points. That's a bad offensive game for them, even if they're playing a great defense. But right now, the only player in the league playing better than Patrick Mahomes is Lamar Jackson. So we're getting in week 3 a game between 2 players playing at a higher level than any 2 players in the league. Lamar's going to have to play great for them to go to Arrowhead and get the upset.
Last season, the only game that really worried you as a Chiefs fan was this one against the Ravens last year. This is a much better quarterback in Lamar Jackson this year. He has a year under his belt. That was an overtime loss for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson said he felt that loss and took it with him all offseason. He's now a stronger, better quarterback. How do these two teams differ from the teams you saw last season, and does that give the Ravens any more of an advantage?
Well, I think that Greg Roman, the time that he was able to spend with Lamar this offseason, and what they have learned about pass coverages, how comfortable he's got throwing the ball. I was like, well, who do I give credit on TV? He said, well, I write the music and he raps. And so they're doing it together. They spent so much time. Lamar has worked on the basics of being a quarterback. What are my drops? What are my reads? Where's the ball going? Where are the protections weak? And that will affect this game more so than anything else that we've seen. One thing I know that Baltimore is excited about is when you watch that Raiders film, 3 of the 4 quarters, Kansas City didn't score. So, yeah, they did score 4 touchdowns in 1 quarter, but the rest of the quarters they didn't. And that Raiders defense does not present the problems or have the coverage people that Baltimore had. So, for me, Baltimore's always been strong up front. I believe their secondary, especially with their safeties, Lamar's passing, they're the difference between this year's game and last year's game, Nick.
And last year's game, Tyreek Hill was playing. He's not playing in it. Last year's game, Eric Fisher was playing. He's not playing in this. So the Chiefs, I would argue, 2 most critical pieces of their offense other than their quarterback. Their best offensive lineman, most important offensive lineman, the most dynamic receiver are out. And the other biggest difference is this. In last year's game, on the final play of the game, 4th down in overtime, the Ravens took Lamar off the field because it was 4th and, I think, 20, and he was such a limited passer that if they were going to go to a passing play, they felt more comfortable with Robert Griffin III being in there. That is not the case with Baltimore anymore. Lamar has blossomed in a way I don't think anyone could have expected this early as a passer. So the Chiefs are not going to be able to have a game plan of just take away the run. They're going to have to defend every blade of grass. That's been very difficult for Ravens opponents.
And the Chiefs need Honey Badger. They don't need Tyrann Mathieu. They need Honey Badger with all those tight ends. They got 3 tight ends. He's going to have to play big, and Lamar in that running attack. So let's watch Tyrann Mathieu. He's the one of the new additions to Kansas City. That should be an upgrade.
Are you ready for what's ahead? You can't always predict the future, but you can game plan for it. Generations of families and businesses have harnessed the power of Pacific to help them reach their unique goals. Whether you need to save money, to meet your needs, ensure your family is protected, or make sure you don't run out of money, Pacific Life has a variety of financial solutions that can help. Pacific Life counts more than half of the 100 largest U.S. companies as its clients and has been named one of the 2019 World's Most Ethical Companies by the Ethisphere Institute. Protecting what matters most to people for 150 years and counting, that's the power of Pacific. Ask a financial professional about how Pacific Life can help you game plan for your future, or visit www.pacificlife.com. All right, Sunday Night Football now, offering us up a good one. Baker and the Browns hosting Jared Goff and the Rams. Good test for both teams. According to Fox Bet, the Rams are 3-point favorites despite being on the road. Baker, who's been answering questions all week about his team's slow start, knows this will definitely be a challenge.
They're a team that made it all the way, and they have a lot of the same guys and some added pieces as well. So, yeah, it's a good measuring stick for us, but it's about what we do. It's about the fact that we know it's going to be a great challenge, but when it comes down to it, we need to focus on us. We don't need to worry about anything else besides doing our job and whatever game plan we have to attack their team and their players that they have. We need to accomplish that.
So you see, this is a Browns team that has so much talent, but they've yet to put it all together in one complete package. You expect the Browns to start clicking this weekend against the Rams?
Well, they better start. I mean, I'm not supposed to be looking at the schedule as a former player, but every once in a while, you take a little peek out there on the yonder and see what's out there.
On the yonder.
Yeah, nothing but bad news for them. It's that time. We're going to give teams mostly 4 weeks. But, man, you can start getting into dangerous territory. In the first month of the season, you go 1-3. I didn't like Baker's comments about the Rams saying this should be a good test because I want some consistency. Every week he should be saying it's going to be a good test. Yes, the Rams did go to the Super Bowl. Yes, they have been double-digit win teams the last couple seasons. Yes, this will be a good test. But so were the Tennessee Titans week number 1. Now, the Tennessee Titans team I saw last night, that's the team that whooped you in week number 1. So I'm concerned about the overall physicality because, yes, they've gotten a lot of headlines this offseason. Baker, Odell, all these little shiny little things. Football's a game of physicality. In the first 2 weeks of the season, I have not seen the Cleveland Browns be the type of physical team that they were the second half of the season when Freddie Kitchens took over, where they were running the ball down people's throat. Their offensive line was one of their strong suits. No, not that way. They're not running the ball effectively, and that offensive line has been a tremendous liability, which has led to Baker getting off to a sluggish start. So physicality is a huge part of it. And they got a lot of little star players and everything. But if they're big people on that offensive line and they don't play a little more discipline without all those penalties, they will not win. And you can watch this fan base that's trying to get behind this team that has witnessed them lose a lot of games. You let them go 0-2 at home, barely getting past a Jets team that the quarterback's out with the high school kissing thing. And
next quarterback gets injured in the game.
Yeah, he tears ligaments in his ankle. He's out for the season. So it could get real scary as far as Baker because they won't have any support. Let this game get out of hand. Watch what the Cleveland fans do to them, and this could be ugly. That's that tough part, Jenna, that we were talking about before the season. What do they do when they go through a bad month of football? Because they're so young.
And to your point about what they have coming up, 5 straight games against 5 teams that are right now all 2-0. Rams at Baltimore, at San Francisco, home for Seattle, at New England. So this is the meat of their season right here, the most difficult stretch of their season. And if that's 5-game stretch, only 2 of those games are at home. So you want to take advantage of that. Your point about Baker, to misquote, if I may, Marshall Mathers, will the real Baker Mayfield please stand up?
I know what you did there.
Thank you, Jenna. Real Slim Shady. There you go. Exactly right.
What's up?
I mean, this is not the guy I saw the last half of last year.
No.
This is not the guy that I said could be a dark horse MVP candidate. This is not a guy that is taking full advantage of the most talent he's had on a roster in his young NFL career. Now, we saw he and Odell hook up nicely in that Jets game, and I know that he's running for his life some, so it's not entirely his fault. But Baker Mayfield's got to be better. The reason, in my estimation, that they are not right now 2-0, even if it would be an ugly 2-0, is because of that just atrocious quarter of football he played against the Titans. They had grinded back into that football game to only be down 2 points with the ball against Tennessee, and then all of a sudden you have 3 straight interceptions, including a pick 6, and the season gets off to a terrible start. Yeah, they're going to have to block Aaron Donald. But the truth about the Rams defense is they've got Aaron Donald. They have 2 corners with great names and good ability. And aside from that, that defense can be had. Carolina scored 27 on them with a hampered Cam Newton. Like, the defense last week was a bit, to me, a little different because the Saints lose Drew Brees middle of the game. That offense is going to come to a grinding halt. So I think the defense can be had if you can block Donald. And Aaron Donald, by the way, his last 5 games,
hasn't done much.
0 sacks, 13 pressures. So while I'm sure he's freeing up other people, Dante Fowler's come on this season. Like, he's making it easier for other people. If you can block Donald, you should be able to move the football. And that's what I'm relying on the Browns to do, because the talent on this team, they have talent on both sides of the ball, but you've got a top-flight wide receiver, another very good wide receiver, and a player that I believe is going to be a top-flight quarterback. He just hasn't shown it yet.
You look at this Browns team, yeah, they were mired in penalties. They've got issues on their offensive line, and then there's Baker Mayfield. So just stick with Baker, because that's Baker. It's the popular topic right now. Break down what he's not doing right or what he could be doing better. Is it just that he's holding on to the ball too long? Is he not reading coverages? Just give us an idea of what he's doing that is different from what he did last year.
Well, as Nick stated, he had an awful quarter. He made a couple bad throws, trying to force balls in the tight spots. So it is a coverage recognition thing. But if he doesn't have a clean pocket, the reason why we love Baker from the abbreviated season #1 was he's so accurate with the football. And that has not been there. It's hard to be accurate when you can't step into your throws. And OBJ is not the reason, Jenna, why he's playing bad. OBJ is playing to the level that we've seen him. He was the only bright spot in that loss to the Titans in week #1. He was outstanding on the Monday night game. So, to me, clean up the pocket, which starts with the running game. When Freddie Kitchens took over last year, we didn't know what they were going to do. But their identity was Nick Chubb, run the ball, play action pass, Baker Mayfield, and his accuracy. Now they have OBJ. Are they falling too much in love with trying to throw the ball down the field compared to solidifying that offensive line, which we see a lot of teams struggling with their offensive line play early in the season, Nick?
And that is in this game, just to flip the sides for a moment, that is where the Browns should be able to take advantage of the Rams to a degree. We have seen this year already defenses starting to adjust to the Goff-McVay combination. You've seen teams, if you watch the NFL game rewinds of these, even if it's tough to see in real time, defense is waiting until there's less than 15 on the play clock and then doing a bunch of shifting, waiting until McVay can't give Goff the cheat codes anymore and then trying to confuse him. And you've got 2 second-year players starting on the offensive line for the Los Angeles Rams. We know the Browns have 3 very solid defensive linemen, including one superstar in Myles Garrett, even if he's penalized too often, even if he's committing too many penalties, I should say. The Browns defense is going to have to hold up its end of the bargain in this, but they've done that through 2 weeks. It doesn't seem like it because the first week the Titans scored 40, but that game they had 15 going into the fourth quarter, and then the floodgates opened because of the turnovers. The Browns defense was extraordinary in week 2. Browns defense going to have to keep that up, and it is up to Baker and the offense to hold up their end of the bargain.
You know, I know more than one Slim Shady song.
Okay, tell us that.
Still...
We're not live on television. Hiring can be a slow process. Cafe Altura's COO, Dylan Miskowitz, needed to hire a director of coffee for his organic coffee company, but he was having trouble finding qualified applicants. So he switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job, so you get qualified candidates fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in just a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/approach. That's ZipRecruiter.com/APPROACH. ZipRecruiter.com/approach. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
This we know. No Drew Brees this Sunday on the road to face the Seahawks. He's still out with the injured thumb. Who will replace him? Well, that we don't know. Sean Payton has yet to name a starter, whether that's Teddy Bridgewater or Taysom Hill. He does have Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas on offense to help out whoever ends up behind center. Chris Carter, can the Saints stay in the playoff hunt without Drew Brees?
Oh, this is going to be a tough task. This is going to be tough. They have to make sure that they don't put too much stress on Teddy throwing the ball down the field, try to manage the game, because they should be able to keep this game fairly close with their defense. The Saints do have a good defense. They're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson. This is not one of the more sophisticated offenses, Nick.
No.
Not one of Nick Wright's favorite teams to watch, even though Russell's one of his favorite guys to watch. Yep. So keep the game close. The Saints have tremendous special teams. Let Teddy get a feel for the game, because starting the game is totally different. I do like the fact that Sean Payton, old school, I'm not giving people too much information. I'm not telling them what the game plan is. Let Pete Carroll and them sweat it out. Let their defense this week, if there's 100 defensive plays that they can have in practice, we want them to practice 50 for Taysom Hill and 50 for Teddy Bridgewater, compared to announcing the starter on Tuesday, allowing Pete and them to have their game plan to be, you know something, we're going to do 90% Teddy and only 10 on the backup quarterback. So that advantage of not knowing is an advantage that Sean Payton, he is utilizing that, and they will have some surprises. I wouldn't be surprised if Taysom Hill played quarterback at least 15 plays in the game.
Wow.
Typically, you have 65 plays. I believe 15 plays minimum, Sean Payton gets him involved, not because he doesn't believe in Teddy, because he is a legitimate offensive threat, running it and throwing it, Nick.
And whether he lines up under center for 15 plays is one thing. I would imagine he'll be on there'll be a lot of plays where Teddy and Taysom Hill are on the field at the same time.
Yes.
If you remember last year, there was a play where Drew Brees, Teddy, and Taysom, all three of them were on the field at the same time. Didn't know what the hell was going on. Here's what the Saints have going for them, even though I think they're going to lose this weekend. Going to Seattle is hard for anyone, much less for Teddy Bridgewater, who's making his first true start. He started Week 17 last year, but his first true start since the knee injury, essentially, as far as a game that really matters in 4 years, is that all of a sudden the NFC South, if you are 3-3, are you still alive for the division? Probably. Carolina's 0-2 and quarterback injury. Atlanta, we've seen them hot and cold this year. They're fortunate. They needed a 4th and 3. Brilliant play by Julio Jones. And Tampa, I know they just won. They still have Jameis as their quarterback. They're still going to have issues. So the division that I thought could potentially produce at least 2, if not 3 playoff teams, all of a sudden, just 2 games into the year, looks a little different. So they don't have to play great. But the most important thing for this game against the Seahawks to me, is Teddy Bridgewater getting some confidence. Teddy has not played a great stretch of football, even a couple series in a row, since that knee injury. He now is going to be relied on. I know they haven't announced him as starter. He's going to be the starter. Going to be relied on as the starting quarterback for at least a month in New Orleans. Even if you don't come away with a win, if Teddy can start to get his legs under him to a degree, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we've got a tough stretch after this with Dallas, but then we have Tampa Bay, we have a game against Arizona a few weeks after that. Can you do enough with Teddy in this game so you feel better about Teddy over the next month? That, to me, is the key in this game for New Orleans, because going to Seattle's tough putt for anybody.
All right, let's move on and talk Eagles. The team opted for a walkthrough Wednesday instead of padded practice to help the guys heal and rest ahead of Sunday's game against the Lions. Despite the rest, Eagles will still most likely be without Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, and Dallas Goedert. However, according to Fox Bet, the Eagles are still 6-point favorites. See, should this banged-up Philadelphia team's offense be on upset alert against the Lions?
Absolutely. If I was them, I'd try to go to a little more ball control. I wouldn't be as extensively in 3 receivers as much, knowing that Alshon's injured, that D-Jack is out. So what would you got 3 running backs. I'm going with Jordan Howard in the trade from Chicago. I thought he was going to be one of the wild cards in the season. He should be a 1,000-yard rusher. Him, Miles Sanders, and Darren Sproles. I would have Darren Sproles to utilize to relieve some of that burden of my wide receiving core and put him in space. He is a nightmare in space to be able to get on the ground. So I believe that that's what Doug Peterson has to be able to do to be able to take some of the pressure off of Carson. I do think that this offensive line should get a little healthy against Detroit. Detroit doesn't have one of the better fronts that we've seen in the NFL. We know that Philly has struggled in the last couple of weeks, but that's what you have to do, especially when you have guys injured. How do I adapt my offense? How do I protect my defense a little bit and eat up some of that clock? This is the type of team that Philly, you have to be able to become. Later in the year, weather starts to change. Can I adapt to the opposition? Can I adapt to the elements? Can I adapt to losing a player? You have the best roster in the NFL. Now is one of those kind of games where we should be able to see that depth, especially on the offensive side. Nick.
What's going to hurt Philly, though, is because even though they have all this depth, for those 3 injuries that you mentioned to be pass catchers and it to be in Jeffrey and Deshaun, your 2 pass catchers who are your most dynamic down-the-field threats, it's going to shorten the field as far as what Detroit has to defend. And so I agree with you that they're going to have to run the ball and run the ball consistently, but you're going to probably be dealing with an extra man in the box. If Deshaun's out there even at 60%, you still worry about him beating you over the top. You don't worry as much about Nelson Aguilar beating you over the top. You don't really worry about Zach Ertz at all beating you over the top, even though he's an excellent receiver. So the field's going to be constricted. And here's the thing about Detroit, a team we basically never talk about. They have played 7 quarters of extraordinary defense. They had held Arizona to nothing through 3 quarters before it fell apart.
Until they got gas.
Until they got gas because of the tempo, how fast they're running plays. They played a Chargers team that won 12 games last year, and that the reason people were maybe skeptical of the Chargers this year was defensive injuries. Nobody had worry about their offense. They held that Chargers team to 10 points last week. So they've played really good defense aside from that, the breakdowns in the 4th quarter against Arizona in week 1. I don't know about Matt Patricia, the head coach, but Matt Patricia, the defensive head coach, the defensive side of the ball, has got the Lions playing good football. And so you are now playing a Philly team whose offensive line's not playing up to its ability, whose doesn't have its deep threats. I think Philly's going to win. I want to make that clear. But it wouldn't be shocking if Detroit, who hasn't lost a game yet this year, comes out and wins this football game.
Which also adds to your point that time of possession is going to be key, running the ball and whatnot with the Eagles, right?
Yeah, you have to feel very comfortable with Fletcher Cox. And you mentioned him a couple days ago. It's time for Fletcher Cox to have a big game. It's time for that defensive front to be able to take over a game and dominate. If Philadelphia is going to reach their goals, and that as far as to get into the postseason, these are the types of games. You don't want to get to December and be looking back and be like, wow, man, we know Aguilar catches that down the sideline, probably going to turn out different there in Atlanta. Oh, man, what about that week number 3 in Detroit? We end up letting go in Philly.
Against Detroit.
In Philly, against Detroit. It got away from us because, let me tell you something, those Dallas Cowboys now, they're for real.
And they're 3-0. I know the game hasn't been played yet. They play Miami, right? The Cowboys are 3-0. It just hasn't happened yet. So you lose this game. You're 2 games back at Dallas already in the season. One thing of note for optimism for Philly, Carson Wentz has been 2 different players, home and road. He has been league MVP Carson Wentz when he's playing at the Link. He's been okay Carson Wentz when he's playing on the road. The fact that this game's in Philadelphia is an enormous component for Carson as he tries to get back on the track we saw him on a couple years ago.
Back here, first things first, and we're here with former NFL quarterback Danny Cannell. Hey, Danny.
How's it going?
What's up, man? Good to
Doing
see
all right?
you.
It's good to be back. Feels
wait.
like I haven't been here in a while.
Wait a second.
Here, go.
You have more hair than the last time I saw you, bro.
It's growing
nice
out.
new glasses and everything. It's growing out.
But wait.
And what about my man?
I know, it looks sharp. It looks good, you know?
The promotion that was
Sharp.
paused because of Danny Cannell's shoes, of all things.
Danny has not come on this show wearing a pair of shoes that cost less than $1,000.
Oh, that's not true.
At
That's
any
not true.
point.
You got to have hookups. You know,
Oh,
you gotta
okay.
have hookups. You gotta
Cost
talk to the right
$1,000
people.
for the common man. Danny Cannell just get them sent to him. I got you.
All right, let's talk some football. You could say the hottest quarterback in the league thus far has been Lamar Jackson. Here's how I know. He has the highest passer rating right now in the NFL. He has yet to throw a pick, and he's put on about 20 pounds of muscle since last season, which makes me very happy. Danny, back in 2018, before the draft, you were very high on Lamar. Is this level of success right now sustainable from what we've seen from him so far this season?
Absolutely. Lamar Jackson, and I've said this since he was coming out, is a franchise NFL quarterback. He will absolutely sustain this level of success. He has an offensive coordinator in Greg Roman, who, by the way, took Colin Kaepernick to the Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers, who is designing plays specifically for a quarterback with his skill set. But Lamar Jackson is Michael Vick 2.0. He's a better runner, and he is a much better passer when you look at accuracy, the ability to read out defenses, and to make the throws down the field. Now, the level of
Explain to
steps.
us why he's a better runner than Michael Vick.
So,
because
I
it
think-
would appear that Michael Vick might be the fastest quarterback that ever played the game.
Correct, but I don't think Lamar is that much slower, but he also has a better knack for protecting himself, which is the one question, and you're saying I'm glad he put on the 20 pounds because he's going to be able to have to be durable at this level, but he has a knack, and I've played with some guys like this, not quarterbacks, but Warwick Dunn was a great example, a smaller running back who was fast, but he had a knack for not taking those big shots. There's an innate ability, a sense, like it's like a
Tremendous
sixth
point.
sense that you cannot coach, where they kind of feel there's a presence. Okay, now's when I have to turn my body. Now's when I have to get out of bounds. Now's when I have to get rid of the football. And Lamar Jackson has that sixth sense where I do think he'll protect himself. Now, there's going to be some shots that he has to take, but I also think last year, as much as he was running the ball, he showcased that he can take some of that pounding that he would as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that one problem, and with the dual threat quarterback and with the African-American quarterback, is when they try to convert from being an athlete to being a quarterback, it seems like there's a lot of ego there. So in dealing with Lamar, and you got a lot of intel with Lamar. He's from down in South Florida, went to Louisville. You also believe in the coaching that he got there, that he was underrated coming out as a passer. What they're doing with him now, he wants to learn the passing game. At this point, no, he's not Colin Kaepernick. He's a lot better thrower than Colin. He doesn't have the height and everything, but he's a better runner as far as avoiding people than Colin Kaepernick was. And you can see, I did last week's game, going down there interviewing people. Lamar is working on everything that you would want a young quarterback who was a pocket quarterback to work on. Yes, he worked on his body a little bit as far as putting on some weight and everything, but everything else is by the book of how you would train your franchise quarterback. And you have to give, you mentioned Greg Roman, David Cooley is their new passing game coordinator, also coaches their wide receivers. They have done a tremendous job of coaching him up, getting him ready. And what we're seeing, I believe also, he can sustain this, and he is the best version. Greg Roman told me, don't compare him to Tyrod Taylor and don't compare him to Cap. We know both of these guys have had success in this league, but he is so much better than both of them in both areas as far as athleticism, running, and throwing, dissecting coverages, Nick.
And the one thing you said that I think some people would take issue with or disagree with, I think it's why Cris had you expand on it, is the idea that Lamar's a better runner than Vick. So if you're watching and you say, no, he's not, even if you disagree with Danny on that, he is so clearly right now a more polished passer than I saw Mike Vick at any point until he had that year in Philadelphia. It took Vick a decade and a time away from football and then time with Andy Reid until he showed me the ability to pass the way Lamar is passing right now. So even if Vick was a 9.5 out of 10 on running and you think Lamar's an 8.5, the passing is so different. And there's a reason that Vick, despite all his brilliance at Virginia Tech, did not have nearly the statistical success as a passer Lamar did. Lamar's passing numbers in college were exceptional. Vick was special in college and early on because of the athleticism and the ability to throw a great deep ball. That's the one thing Vic always was able to do. Lamar has been showing this year the ability to throw into windows, the ability to connect with Hollywood Brown, who I know you were high on coming out of college, but Hollywood Brown and Lamar have not had a ton of time together. You talked about this when you were there this weekend. Hollywood Brown was injured during the offseason. It's obviously his first year, so they don't even have the full route tree or the full rapport of things they can do together, and they're still having this connection. Now, is he going to keep up the highest quarterback rating in the NFL? No, but he doesn't have to have taken 3 steps forward in 1 year, and it is something for Baltimore because the defense didn't go anywhere. In fact, they added Earl Thomas. The running game didn't go anywhere. In fact, they added Mark Ingram. That if he just took 1 step forward, this was the only team in their division that made the playoffs last year, that if he looks like he's taken 2 or 3 steps forward, this can be a real Super Bowl contender, and they're playing another Super Bowl contender this weekend.
I feel like you guys are trying to get me to walk back that he's as good a runner as Michael Vick. Wait till the end of the season and talk to me because he is electric in a he's electricity in a bottle. Do we forget? So, I do think when we talk about statistics, like at the end of the season, I think every quarterback should have an asterisk, and you should have to remove the Dolphins game because it's going to be a stat patter for sure. But it's almost like we forget because he's passing now that he had 120 yards rushing last week.
Sure.
Like, we're just kind of forgetting that he is such a dynamic runner, and he will have those plays that Mike Vick had, like he had against the Vikings, and like he's running all over people. He will have those plays that are highlight reel type runs. They'll come in time. In addition to the passing, the way they're using him in the passing game, watch out. He's going to be really tough to stop.
So quickly, what do you want to see from him against Kansas City now?
The way he's able to sustain this is be honest and take what the defense is giving him. In Miami, they had 8 in the box, no safety in the gut, and they carved them up. They ran everything diagonal over the top with 0 coverage. Next week against Arizona, they took away a little bit of the passing game to begin with, and what he started doing was read option, I'm going to keep it. They did some play action. Later in the game, him and Hollywood hook up down the field. So read the defense. Week in, week out, you can't have this week I'm going to throw for 300. This week I'm going to run. Whatever the defense gives them, Greg Roman, Cooley are putting them in a great game plan. Believe what you're seeing, and he's going to continue to get more and more confident. When we see these young guys and they have success in the league, it's contagious. And then they start studying more. They want more of it. So I believe we're going to see more of the new Lamar Jackson as far as more days where he has 250 passing, 80 to 100 rushing. Ravens win a whole bunch of games like that, Danny.
Let's move on and talk some Kyle Allen.
Who?
Exactly. Kyle Allen might be the Panthers starting quarterback this Sunday. That's because Cam Newton is still reportedly in a walking boot and will likely sit out this week's matchup against the Cardinals. Here's head coach Ron Rivera after continuously being asked about Cam's playing status.
I'm not going to talk about it anymore, guys. I mean, let's talk about Arizona. I mean, I haven't really talked about Arizona. So it'd be good to answer those kind of questions.
Cam, though.
I know it's about Cam, but we won't. I don't know any more until tomorrow. So let's just, let's talk about Arizona. If not, there's no reason for me to stand here.
You felt before the opener, you were 100% confident he was going to be ready to go. Where are you on that level now?
I just asked you to ask me questions about somebody else. I'm not going to do this anymore. Okay? I told you I won't know anything until tomorrow. Okay? Thank you.
I got to. I interviewed Ron Rivera when he was on the Eagles staff. One of the nicest guys. He was even in his bout of frustration, he was still really nice about it. And it's tough. Who knows what you're going to get with Cam Newton? And he's been riddled with injuries so far the last stretch. What do you make of the latest setback now, Danny, for Cam?
I think you're seeing the end of Cam Newton as a franchise quarterback. It's really coming to a close, and I think you can probably tie that in with Ron Rivera. As good as a guy he is, when you lose as many games, I think was it 9 out of the last 10 going back to last season. The lack of success, even with a Super Bowl appearance under your belt, even with the success he had recently, it's what have you done for me lately? But when it relates to Cam specifically, so I think you're seeing, and what you saw in the Thursday night game against Tampa Bay was you saw a quarterback who they were designing plays. And I know the last play of the game when they pitched it to McCaffrey was controversial. Hey, why don't you just give it to Cam? I think that was their offensive coordinator saying, and their team saying, we are not relying on Cam anymore as a runner because we can't threaten him. We can't put him out there. We can't subject him to those types of hits. If you take away that aspect of Cam's game, he is a very average to below average passing quarterback. And in today's game, you have to be able to stretch the field vertically and throw the football down the field. And tell me this, so if they're going to clear house, they're going to fire Ron Rivera, which I do think is going to happen. If you check the Vegas sports books, he is the leader in the clubhouse as far as which coach is going to get fired first. Usually lean on them. They usually know these types of situations. And you're the Panthers. You got a young, Christian McCaffrey's the face of that franchise now. Are you going to continue with this Cam Newton experiment, or are you going to cut ties? And then if you cut ties with Cam Newton, do you envision either A, another team paying him the type of starting quarterback money that he would command, or if they don't, would you expect Cam to go compete for a job? I don't. I think he is done as a franchise quarterback.
Okay, Danny, I like your energy and everything. All right? I'm not going to murder you on national TV, but Cam Newton, after we've seen what we've seen in Nick Foles and Sam Bradford and some of these other guys that have gone on for multiple chances of being a franchise quarterback, I don't know why you would doubt Cam Newton as far as his ability to move on. I could understand. I would listen to, they got a new owner. They're trying to do new things there. Okay, I'm willing to listen to that. But to try to say that Cam Newton is not a franchise quarterback in the NFL when this is a foot injury with him trying to change his throwing motion, that he can't get healthy after that second game there in New England. So I got to doubt you on that one, all right? Because I have seen quarterbacks continue, and I'll even go back to Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham in 1998, MVP of the league after coming out of retirement. Cam has more skill than him. So for me, these quarterbacks are playing longer and longer. These coaches are coaching them up better and better. It's easier to play in the pocket than ever before. And ultimately, when you lose your ability to run, that's the best time to teach a very, very athletic quarterback. Nick, you said it earlier in the show. When did Michael Vick get it? Well, after being out of football and then going to Andy Reid and realizing I must do that. I believe that Cam has that. But this season is not the way to judge Cam Newton, because when you hurt your feet, you can't make money with your feet being hurt in the NFL if you are a skilled player.
So here's the thing that I don't get, because you're not the first person to say something similar to this. And obviously, listen, I listen to your radio show. You cover and know all sports, but I think most people see Danny Cannell and they think your favorite's probably college football. Like, they associate you most with college football. And Paul Feinbaum's another college football guy, too. And the two most pessimistic people I've heard on the national stage about Cam are guys that I immediately associate with college football, which is odd to me, because Cam Newton had one of the greatest seasons in college football history. And I'm just curious why the margin of error we will give Cam is so much smaller than any quarterback I can remember. Let's just go over the last 5 years. 15, they win the MVP. He wins the MVP, they go to the Super Bowl. 2016, he had a really bad year. 2017, not long ago, they're 11-5, and he is brilliant in a 5-point playoff loss in New Orleans. Last year, they are 6-2. He is having the best passing season of his career, a 101 rating, completing 67% of his passes, and T.J. Watt wrecks him. From that moment forward, since then, they've lost 9 of 10. Since then, he's been bad. He was injured at the end of last season, injured at the beginning of this season. Now we're like, okay, he's cooked. He's done in a league where we've got, look at this, Gardner Minshew we're excited about because they're on their backup quarterback. And now, could the Panthers move on from him? Sure, just like the Panthers could move on from Ron Rivera. I think both those guys would instantly go to the top of the market for any team they should, looking for a coach or a quarterback. Like, why do you think Cam, because he has a foot sprain, all of a sudden is not going to be able to run the football anymore? And why
watch their play calling? That's what I'm going. And are we forgetting, all we've talked about is a foot sprain? Are we forgetting the shoulder surgery?
No.
We haven't even mentioned that, because I think we are in a new era of NFL. And maybe it's the awareness because Andrew Luck did it, because he hung it up. But you have multiple guys now that have made $100 million in the bank, where that makes your decision a little bit different. And I think that has to come into play, because I think somebody will offer him an opportunity. But I don't know if Cam takes it.
Wait a second. I know how Cam was brought up. And he wasn't brought up like Andrew Luck. All right?
Right.
Andrew Luck brought up a lot like yourself.
Yep.
All right? I don't see guys brought up a little bit different than that quitting in the NFL. And Andrew Luck is no litmus test for guys who love football. All right?
Right.
Andrew Luck, how much does he really, really love football? When you start going back on it, how much really did he love football? And trying to paint Cam with the same brush as if he wouldn't want to maybe potentially go to Chicago or go somewhere else, I think that is not fair to a guy that's been MVP of this league. We just watched Eli Manning the last 5 or 6 years start the season 0-2. Did nobody care? Did nobody care one bit? I guess because he'd been to 2 Super Bowls compared to Cam being 1. Eli never had the season that Cam had in his MVP season.
Do you think that Cam has one of the biggest egos in the NFL?
Yeah.
All right, so because I think that comes into play. I don't think he's gonna look at going somewhere
ego makes you
else.
retire?
No. Hold on. I
No,
know.
but I think
wait,
it might make you pass on opportunity. It might make you say, you know what?
I don't think you know Cam well enough.
I don't know Cam at all. I'm
Okay,
just going
thank
from
you.
what I
Then you're
have on
just
the
guessing.
outside.
Right. Then you're just guessing.
Hold on,
Right.
Danny, but the point you're making is actually the one point you said there is one I think I agree with, which is I do not see Cam Newton, who has been a superstar at every level, at the point where he gets to in his career, where it's like, we'll bring you in and let you compete.
Right.
I don't see him signing up for that. But I don't think he's anywhere close to that point in his career. I don't think there are not enough quality quarterbacks in this league that there's not going to be a team that says, I would love to have Cam Newton. We are not far removed from Glennon getting $15 million a year, Flynn getting $16 million, Nick Foles just got $20. Like there are.
Bradford got a boatload too. Those weren't bad signings, though, just so we're clear.
Okay.
Like, I don't think those were great signings either. But even at those numbers, 15 to 20 range, you're going to have Dak getting 35. You've already got Russell Wilson making 35. You think Cam Newton's going to say, sure, I'll play for 20? And he might. But I don't know. There's something about me that tells it. The sad part about all this is, and this is without knowing him, this is watching him from the outside.
Okay.
If he would just spend as much time on his craft as he did on his wardrobe, he could be the best player, the most dominant quarterback in the league.
That's extra. That's out of bounds. How a man dresses and everything had nothing to do with him throwing the ball.
But watch. No,
Danny,
I got homework for you. I have homework for you. He just released his own. He's doing a series with YouTube. It's Cam Unfiltered. It's 8 minutes long. He released it after they were 0-2. Do you know what? It's an 8-minute thing. Do you know what 3 minutes of it are dedicated to? The first 3 minutes to his wardrobe, which he spends on his offseason. On his Tuesday, he goes and meets with a stylist. Do you think Tom Brady or Drew Brees or any other quarterback spends that much time?
Yes, I think Tom Brady cares about how he looks.
No, I think it's laid out for him.
Hold on.
No, I'm telling you, he goes out there and he says, while I'm preparing for a game, I think about what colors I'm going to wear, what patterns I'm going to wear.
We've been playing this game 100 years. Cam Newton going to be the first guy to retire because his clothes are more important than playing football.
Let me just tell you something. Has his play ever got better? Or is he plateaued?
Just stop for a second.
Yes.
You said the number one thing, I don't know him. So everything you say after that is a guess. I sat on a football field in Florida Stadium and saw a kid, 17 years old, with his dad. Asked him, do you want a scholarship to the University of Florida? And he said, yes, I love football. I watched him lead the top recruits in the nation. They were playing music. All of them followed Cam around. So regardless of what you think, Cam is a leader. And I can guarantee you there is a locker room full of football players that would follow Cam Newton into battle. If you can follow Sam Bradford, if you can follow Eli Manning, if you can follow Nick Foles, you can follow Cam Newton. And everything else is just made up. And how he's dressing and everything. What about AB? He's spending a lot of time on his clothes and everything.
Real quick.
He's not a quarterback.
Hold on. You know who is a quarterback? Gardner Minshew. And everyone loves the disco outfit and the mustache. We can't decide that certain guys it's adorable and certain guys it's taken away from football. Gardner Minshew, the reason it's the Min Show is not just because he played well, but because of how he carries himself, how he dresses. Cam Newton, the fact, like Russell Westbrook, that they have an eclectic style of dress that might not be to your taste or your taste. I happen to love them. That does not change whether or not he can be.
I don't care either. But you said Tom Brady. Tom Brady has somebody lay it out for him, and he does it. Cam Newton's. I'm telling you, watch the show. Watch the show.
Much more first things first right after this.
I don't want to do this now. This ain't no debate show. All right? I'm not messing with
Watch his documentary. He put it out there.
The expectations surrounding Baker Mayfield coming into his sophomore season were sky high. That after what he did out of the gate his rookie year. But so far, it's been a bit of a struggle. Baker ranked 27th in the NFL with a 73.4 passer rating, but hoping to bounce back this week. Won't be easy as the Browns host the undefeated Rams on Sunday.
We're going to figure it out. I mean, I love how everybody's acting like the world's falling down. We can play better, but a win is a win, and we're never going to take that for granted.
When Freddie says that he has to put you in better situations, from your perspective, like, what does that actually mean?
You know, he's going to try and take care of me, but I have to do my job when it all comes down to it. He's our head coach, and he's going to say that, but I have to play better.
All right, so what does playing better mean, CC? What do you want to see from Baker this Sunday night against the Rams?
Well, for one, let's go back to when Freddie Kitchens took over the team. They went from Hugh Jackson throwing the ball all over the place to let's condense the formation, let's run the ball with Nick Chubb, let's not target Jarvis Landry a bunch of times. I think he was getting targeted 11 or 12 times. That immediately went down to 7. Right now, I know he's excited about having OBJ there, but you need to be able to spread the ball around. I think that they still need another deep threat. They miss Antonio Callaway. So sometimes as a young player, especially as a quarterback, when you have success, you want to hold on to the ball, try to create big plays down the field compared to, I'm going to take what the defense is going to give me. You're never going to go broke taking a profit. That's what NFL coaches teach. Throw the ball to the flat, throw the ball to talented guys, let them run with it. But let's get back to a running game. Let's play a little more conservative. Baker, we know that you have a gunslinger mentality, but you started less than 15 games. So let's go back to some of the basics. Run the ball, be physical, get the ball out of your hands. We know OBJ's a threat. He's played well in these 2 games. But let's get the ball to some other players to make the defense be honest. Those are the ways that Baker's able to get this team to have success against the Rams because, Nick, you believe that this defense, outside the big names that they have, you can put up some yards and points against the Rams.
I think the Rams defense can be had. Listen, they have the best player on defense, maybe the best player in the whole league in Aaron Donald. And Aaron Donald has drawn such attention that all of a sudden this year, Dante Fowler and the newly acquired Clay Matthews they each have 2 sacks this season. I think a lot of that's because of what Aaron Donald is demanding on the inside. Those guys are getting single teamed on the outside. But yeah, I think that you saw the Carolina drop 27 on them in a game where Cam was not right then and obviously wasn't right the following week. We saw that offense looked against Tampa Bay. I think that Talib and Peters are both good players. I don't know that either is a great player at this point, but they're both good players. But, yeah, I don't think the Rams have a dominant defense. I think the Rams are going to try to beat you by a good defense and that very eclectic's the wrong word, but a diverse offense, an offense that you don't know what they're going to hit you with. But on the Baker Mayfield side of things, I would like to see him get back to what made him special his rookie year, which was his accuracy, which was his ability to, even as a rookie, scan multiple reads and find his best option. One of the reasons you go from 12 targets a game, Jarvis Landry, down to 7 is because you're not just going to your first read. Right. You are then going to your second and third reads. Now, I know they want to have David Njoku, but they've got Odell now. So if Jarvis is your second read, Odell's your first read, you have plenty of options. Baker has been rushed this year, and he's been under immense duress this year. That part's not his fault, but he has to play better. Nobody's preseason expectations of the Browns that involved them making the playoffs had anything other than Baker Mayfield playing at a near Pro Bowl level, and right now he's playing worse than he played at the first 2 games of his career, much less when he's the most seasoned he's been.
And seeing the other quarterbacks in that class being Lamar, the last quarterback that was drafted, look how much he improved. Josh Allen, there in Buffalo. Look how much he improved. We haven't had enough with Darnold, but we believe that he has improved. Baker is going the other way, and that's not a good sign for a young quarterback.
Why do you think that is? I mean, we talk about defenses are now have tape on you, but they had tape on Josh Allen and Lamar, and we've really heard these stories of these guys spending the offseason learning, working on their accuracy and their throwing and their passing. Why would a quarterback take a step backwards when it comes to accuracy?
Any of these quarterbacks that we had talked about as far as their improvement, if they were under the same duress as Baker, Lamar in 2 games, not under duress. That's how you can see the improvement that they worked on. But so now you're under duress. I have no running game to support the passing game, and now expectation. So now I start trying to force the ball.
Pressing.
Josh was coming off of a bad year. The offense is more suited to his style. He's getting the ball out of his hands. They've learned that. But when you're getting hit, it's hard. I don't care if you're old, young, it's hard to play the game. And we can see with Baker, the biggest difference that I've seen, accuracy, the one that you've pointed out, and then you talked about him being under duress as far as that offensive line, has not played up to the level we saw them play at the second half of last season.
And one more very small point. When we were talking about this game earlier, you mentioned that Baker said this is going to be a really tough test. And you didn't love it because the mentality each week has to be, it's not a tough test because we're playing the Rams, and then an easier test when we play the Bengals. When I look back to the Week 1 game, the Browns team, with all the hype of which I was a part of, playing a Titans team that people didn't have a ton of expectations for. Browns feeling like this is the year we finally win our first game of the year, which they haven't done in 15 years. I do wonder if we're down 2 going into the fourth quarter if Baker didn't start pressing there. If Baker's mentality going into that game was, we're about to show everyone who the Browns are.
Look, he started throwing interceptions.
Exactly
he got
right.
a little reckless with the football.
And so
Makes sense.
if when it went the wrong way, instead of staying within himself, hey, it's only a 2-point game, we haven't played great,
I'll
tried
take care
to do
of this.
too much, and then the game got away from them because they have, for whatever it's worth, people are so down on the Jets, maybe rightfully so. The Browns are almost getting negatively graded for a game they controlled the entirety of and won 23-3.
Yeah.
It's really just that fourth quarter against Tennessee that's put a damper on their season. He's got a great chance to erase that this weekend against the defending NFC champs.
Last night, Gardner Minshew led the Jags to a win over the Titans. The mustache man went 20 of 30 for 204 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. See, what'd you think of Minshew's performance last night?
I was really impressed. I was really with his overall ability to throw the ball down the field. Typically, with a young guy coming in, coaches tell us all the time, hey, have you changed the game plan? No, we're doing everything. This was one of the few times that you could see that Jacksonville's offense is so much better this year than any other years before, and you thought with Nick Foles they would be limited. Nick Foles injured, they'd be limited throwing it. So very impressed with what he's doing as a thrower.
Think how good he'd be if he didn't spend so much time thinking about his clothes. Gardner Minshew was very good as a rookie, 6th rounder, and maybe we should have seen some of this coming. He did win the Johnny Unitas Award over at playing at Eastern Washington last year. But the real story, Jacksonville, after having 40 hung on them by the Chiefs, were great defensively, shutting down the Texans. They absolutely eliminated the Titans last night. 9 sacks of Marcus Mariota in this football game. The defense is back and in full force.
Is it Eastern Washington State or something? Isn't that up in Cowherd's territory or something?
Washington State in the eastern part, Washington.
Anyway, moving on to the Packers. They host the Broncos on Sunday, and while the Packers are undefeated, Aaron Rodgers has yet to have a big game. 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Good, but not great by his MVP standards. See, how has Rodgers looked in Matt LaFleur's offense to you?
Listen, I'm going to tell you, Jenna, I'm not avoiding the question and everything. He hadn't looked Aaron Rodgers, but he hadn't looked bad. Let's talk about this. Green Bay with the defense. This is the first time that I've been commentating, covering the NFL since my retirement, that they had an elite defense. And I believe at the end of the season, we're going to be like, wow, are they a top 5 defense, top 10 defense? If they keep that up, Aaron Rodgers will round into form with this. I'm glad that they're not trying to do too much, because their defense has been plenty good enough in those 2 divisional wins against the Bears and my Vikings.
Because Rodgers hasn't been great yet this year. They were great offensively in the first quarter of the Minnesota game, and then they got shut out thereafter. They scored 10 points in week 1. But because of that defense, in years past, this Packer team would be 0-2 with the exact same offensive performances.
Right.
Now they're 2-0. Rodgers missed all of preseason. One game his back tightened up. One game he had a bad field, so he wasn't on the same page with everybody. I think he'll have his best game of the year. I think the Packers will win handily.
Also, Jenna, taking consideration, Chicago and Minnesota, they will be one of the
2 of the best defenses in football.
Absolutely.
No question about it.
You guys are adorable at finishing each other's sentences and everything.
We trying. I like Nick Wright.
You could say the hottest quarterback in the league thus
Danny
far
got the fire you would normally get.
has been Lamar Jackson. Here's how I know. He's got the highest passer rating in the NFL. He has yet to throw a pick, and he's put on about 20 pounds of muscle since last season, which makes me and Probably Chris Carter a little happy. Nick, is this level, you might be happy too about that, is this level of success from Lamar sustainable?
If he gained 20 eating Chipotle, Nick would love it.
Listen, is this level sustainable? Listen, a 145 passer rating, no, that's not sustainable. Is Lamar able to sustain a level of play that would have him in contention for All-Pro, for Pro Bowl, for maybe even league MVP? I think he could. I think that what we've seen, which is you cannot sell out against the pass when he can run like that, when they have Mark Ingram, when they have ability to go big with that dynamic tight end, Mark Andrews, who can, if he's in the game, he's a dynamic receiving threat, but you also can line up and run the football. He's going to get great looks, and we have seen him take 3 steps forward after it's not like he came out of nowhere. He won the Heisman Trophy and maybe should have won it twice. He was a great collegiate player, and he wasn't winning the Heisman Trophy just because of running. His passing stats were outstanding. The question was, would he evolve? Or the analogy you use all the time, which I think is a great one, is, all right, how many stories are there in the building? If the elevator's at the 3rd floor and the building's 10 stories high, then you got a long way to go. The problem with some prospects is elevator's at the 3rd floor and it's a 3-story building, and that's as good as it's going to get. With Lamar, we're seeing the building's taller than expected. So I think Lamar's been sensational. What he's doing right now, Pat Mahomes isn't going to keep up exactly what he's doing. He's got a 135 rating. But can he continue to be an excellent player? Can he continue to lead the Ravens to maybe 11 wins, maybe 12 wins? Got to keep in mind, they've lost 2 games with him as a starting quarterback. One in overtime to the Kansas City Chiefs last year, a 12-win team, and a playoff game, a rookie quarterback in the playoffs against a 12-win Charger team. So their winning's been outstanding. He was outstanding as a runner last year. He's outstanding as a runner and passer this year. So with an asterisk, yes, he can keep it up, even if the numbers, of course, regress somewhat.
We weren't just asking if he was going to make that transition when he was in college. We were asking it all of last season, which means he spent a good portion of his offseason working very hard in that trajectory, angled very quickly high up, I think, which gives us a better idea that there are more levels on this elevator and more for us to see from Lamar Jackson.
Absolutely, but I think that not necessarily we missed on a few things, but the things that I look back on, how he improved. For one, we didn't know if his whole mental approach of having success when he went back, would he be just trying to either lift weights and gain weight and saying, you know something, I'm coming back bigger, stronger, faster, and tougher? No, he said, I'm going to lift weights, come back bigger, stronger, smarter than ever before, working on reading the coverages, working on with his receivers, going to a high school field instead of, all the glitz and glamour that come with. Man, having success in the league, what we didn't calculate either was institutional talent. We talk about it around the league, but Baltimore is a franchise we don't give credit to. When they drafted Lamar, we thought he would replace Flacco. But did we think they would do all the necessary things? Go out and get Mark Ingram. Go out and get Hollywood Brown. Go out and be able to do these things. Add David Cooley as their passing game coordinator to be able to open things up. They ran a play in last week's game. After Hollywood hit them up for 4 big shots in week number 1, they faked a bubble screen to him sideways. The tight end came over like he was going to block him and slipped up the sideline. Lamar looked the safety down the middle, and the guy walks into the end zone up the sideline. Those were things that we didn't see. So now when you come back and look at it, it was like when Baltimore gets a star, they support that star with the type of players. When Ray Lewis was drafted there, they made sure he had 2 350-pound beefcakes up there to make sure that Ray could recognize the offense and run sideline to sideline and be the tackling machine that he was. Every time they've had a star, they put the necessary things around them. They believe Lamar is their franchise quarterback, and they're putting all the things around him. I'm excited to see how big, how tall the building is, Nick.
And I know some people have responded to Lamar's hot start with, well, we do have to bake in an element of the defenses he's gone against. Miami in week 1, Arizona in week 2. You might continue that trend depending on what you think Kansas City's defense this year with Kansas City in week 3. I look at it a little bit differently. Yes, of course, he's had advantageous matchups. But for a young quarterback, particularly a young quarterback that was trying to prove himself as a passer more than any of the other young quarterbacks, getting off to a great start, and not only the confidence that instills in him, but the threat that will present to teams later in the schedule on film is going to open up his running lanes. So even if he wouldn't have had this success, if his first 2 weeks were what Aaron Rodgers were, Chicago and Minnesota, that's almost an irrelevant point. Now that's on film. Now it's also he's got those mental pictures of it. So as the season goes on, he will continue to get better, and as defenses get better, they will have to account for his passing game more than they thought at the beginning of the year. So for a guy like him, it's great you start off against 3 potentially weak defenses to get this going, and so I think that actually works in his favor more than anything.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.